Main central objects that we brought in was an authentic main central caboose, which they were doing away with, and I think they charged me some scrap value and delivered it to Wiscasset and dropped it on the siding for us. I rode the car up from Portland, I believe, and on the end of a freight, and they dropped it off in Wiscasset, and then we brought it down by truck. We jacked up one end of it and removed the wheels on this end, the truck under the car, and backed the trailer truck under it, and brought it down and set it up so that people can go inside a caboose and see what they're like inside and what they were like. They were a object that was on the tail end of every freight train in the country in the old days, and now they've been replaced by automatic equipment that keeps an eye on the train automatically. That is a World War II boxcar from France, and they call it a Freedom car. And every state in the United States received one of these from France as a thank you for winning the Second World War. And it was loaded with gifts, products of France to distribute to the people of Maine. And so the American Legion, I believe, had custody of it up in Lisbon, Lisbon Falls, and they moved it down here.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
This building here is quite unique, actually. It's the crossing shanty from the crossing tender shanty from Woodford's Corner in Forest Ave in Portland. And it's the only, what is it, 8-sided building used for this purpose in the state of Maine and probably in New England. And we received that as a donation from the Maine Central Railroad when they abandoned it, and they were going to tear it down, and they said we could take it to Boothbay. Behind me we have a crossing gate here that was donated by the Belfast and Moosehead Lake Railroad, which ran from Burnham Junction down to Moosehead, down to Belfast, and they were very helpful in helping me get started here at Boothbay. And they donated a whole railroad station to us from Thorndike, Maine, which is a stop on our railroad and in use today. But this crossing gate was located in downtown Belfast on Old Route 1 just before it crossed the bridge to go across the harbor. Route 1 was moved to a new high-level bridge, and it was that crossing was abandoned, and so he had a crossing gate and we needed a crossing gate, and he knew it, and he said, "Why don't you take that one?" So I went up there one weekend on a Saturday, and I had some tools, and a friend went with me, and we dismantled the gate, and we got a wrecker to pick it up and load it in my trailer, and we put the boards, the arm, or whatever you call it, that comes down, and that was removed and cut two pieces, and then we put the top down on my convertible and brought it home in the top of my 57 Pontiac. At the other side of the crossing, we got a wigwag. They call it a wigwag crossing signal, and that came from the Maine Central Railroad. Well, this is one of the first smaller of the outbuildings we have that have been moved down here to the museum. And this is the car house, as they called it, for the section house where they kept the motor car for Wiscasset. And this is the actual car house that sat up on the main line of the Main Central, the Rockland branch in Wiscasset. And Mr. Tukey, who laid all this rail, worked out of this shop at this building as a Main Central employee at its original location. To my left is another building that was one of our first buildings, and it is a crossing tenders tower out of Lewiston, Maine. And it became unused, and probably because of automation and you know, lights and gates and all that. So the crossing tenders tower became obsolete, and we laid it on its side and brought it down on a trailer truck and put it up. And for years, the first floor was the office of the whole operation here. And Gail McClellan, one of our longtime secretaries, worked in there for years, and until we got larger space for it. But it all ran out of that building there. And then next to it is our newest building on the property, and one we built here with our own employees and volunteers, and donated lumber in some cases, and it's a car barn or car storage building for some of our rolling stock, because we now have some authentic main narrow gauge equipment here on loan, and they're undercover and protected from the elements, and it's a necessary type of building that you must have when you're trying to save all this equipment. This building here, we more or less created here out of a one-car garage that was donated for our use, and we boarded up the front and made it appear to be a store to commemorate Grover's hardware store down in Boothbay Harbor. And Grover's is an institution in the area. It's one of the last of the family-owned hardware stores in the area that help everybody that has a house in this region, I'll tell you that. And inside is a collection of donated historical items that would have been found in an old-time country store or hardware store of ages gone by. This is another building that we created here, and this was known as Stover's Salt and Pepper House, because it contains a huge collection of salt and pepper shakers in one of the rooms, and out front is a recreation of a kitchen of a local kitchen that belonged to one of our longtime employees, Manly Stover, who gave his heart and soul to this place when we were putting it together. This is a dump truck that came from Waldoboro, Maine, and Jack Kastner, who was a well-known fellow up in Waldoboro, he owned this truck and used it in his business. There's a Model A up there under the street sign, the green 1930 Ford pickup. I bought that from Jack Kastner too. And I went down to the Ford garage to buy a door handle for another Model A in the parts room, and they said they didn't have any Model A parts, but this fellow working over in one section of the garage, the old Ford garage in Waldoboro, said, he said, go ask him. I bet he knows where there's some So I went over to talk to him, introduced myself. This is back when I was in college, actually. And I said, I'm looking for a door handle for a Model A I'm restoring. And he said, yeah, I got one. And I said, really? How much? He said, $15. Well, in the catalog they were like $4 or $5. So I said, geez, that's a lot of money for a door handle. He said, but the truck went with it. So I brought the truck home with $15 with the door handle.
I think this is town of Boothbay Harbor. But this was also a popular machine for contractors as well as for the municipalities. They could get into small places and do the work of a couple of men, and it was called a maintainer. That's the proper name for it.
This building originally sat on the east side at Spruce Point, and in 1995 they were going to, I think, tear it down, and they gave it to the museum, and we moved it up here, and it's been totally restored. We use it for weddings. For a while there was a church that had services here every Sunday, but they have since built their own church and moved away. We have weddings here.
Right.
In other words, they can rent the facilities, have the wedding there, reception over there, steam train rides, tours and antique cars.
Thanks. Can you get him moving?
Behind me here is the Boothbay Town Hall, the original town hall built 2 miles down the road in 1847, and it became pretty much surplus property, and they were wondering what to do with it. There was even talk of tearing it down for a parking lot, and there was a group in town that wanted to save it, and I was approached to get involved and maybe offer a place to move it to. So we moved it up here in pieces from Boothbay Center, and it sat down there next to where the old town garage is on Route 27. And as our former director always said, it's significant that they voted for Abraham Lincoln in this building. This building here was moved here from Route 1 in Waldoboro, where it stood for years at the Perry Green Kennels on the big hill going into Waldoboro on the right. And it was been created or turned into an old-fashioned grocery store.
3 or 4 generations have had kids that had their pictures taken on that over the years, even in our family.
This is a Seagraves fire truck from Bath, Maine, and it appeared here more or less as a quick solution to a Navy personnel out at the air base in Brunswick, and he was deployed to go somewhere, and he wanted a place to park the truck while he was out of town, shall we say, and that was back 50 years ago, so or 45 years ago. So the truck is still here, and it's very popular with families who have their children pose on it, and it's a popular item here on the property. Intersection at the Carlton Bridge.
Yeah.
You know, where the road goes underneath the overhead now? In the railroad? That's where it's at.
Yeah.
Behind me is Tompkins Filling Station, and And this building was donated by Mr. Tompkins in East Boothbay, and it sat on the sharp bend as you enter town on the left. And he wanted to build a new garage on the site, so he moved the building over to the museum here. And it's just the way it looked when it was in use in East Boothbay. Baldwin steam locomotive that ran down in Westbrook, Maine at the S.D. Warren paper mill. It was one of two locomotives that ran there. It's narrow gauge, 2-foot gauge, and these were built in the late 1880s. And the mate to it, or sister to it, is in our shops, receiving all new running gear and new boiler, new cab, and we're going to have that running here on our railroad, the one exactly like this one, in a few months, hopefully. And behind the locomotive, a series of boxcars, original boxcars from the Wiscasset Railroad, Wiscasset and Waterville and Farmington, and the Sandy River and Rangeley Lakes. They are unrestored. They're in the condition that we found them. Pretty nice.
This model built by somebody, I think in Bangor, ran at Expo 67 in Montreal, and it started in the main pavilion and ran outside through the yard and back in. And I was working there for the state of Maine at the time and watched this thing run. Some guy in Bangor made it, didn't he, John?
These are all full of batteries to make that locomotive run. This could run. We have all the track, and we could run this outside and bring it back in, like they did in Montreal.
Yeah. Oh,
This is the schoolhouse.
Yep. It's an exact copy of the one in Massachusetts where Mary Had a Little Lamb was created. There's a poem written about. But we saved the beams, put them back together, and then reboarded it. But yeah, I bought the land from.
Uh-huh.
And it sat right over there where those trucks are parked.
so we run this some days around the yard, giving anybody that wants to ride all around the yard. When we got help enough, volunteers anyway.
And the building itself?
It was built by George's father and donated to the museum.
Operate steam on weekends because we have to have licensed engineers, and we had a couple of volunteers that retired, and we're short of people that can run a steam locomotive.